أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Um, I wanted to join the dialogue basically. Something popped up in my feed the other day. A brother Abdul Rashad out of Chicago, brother that I follow, is doing a lot of good work. Um, Recently, he was had approached the subject of a particular community and how that community's methodologies and approaches have led to some of a disconnect with the broader so-called African American people or community, Muslims included. Um, and so, the brother made his assessment, you know what I'm saying, much of which I would have to concur with, and also add that his assessment is not new. This is not something that is uh, uh, just come up. Those same critiques have been made, 20 years ago, in reference to how, some of us become Muslim, join certain communities, and we become basically aliens in that no one can relate to us and we can't relate to anyone else anymore. So that's a valid critique. Um, I would also just add that in regards to the uh, brother and great pioneer Imam Wardin Muhammad Rahimullah, that no one could ever take away from his stature or his status as a great Imam, a great leader, uh, a visionary. Um, uh, and so his legacy is sealed, right? And I say that in spite of my own particular uh, uh, differences that I had with certain dispositions that were expressed by him. That being said, that's very minor in the overall scheme of things when you're talking about the brother's legacy. Um, Now his community, um, yes, a lot of criticisms have also been lodged at his community, and rightfully so. Um, in spite of what the reasonings might have been for the critique to be or them to be worthy of the critique. The point is, from my own personal experience, and that's what I want to speak on, right? In my own journey of becoming Muslim, I can remember when. Uh, uh, and I'm coming from a particular background, California. We were gang members, and so the perception that the Wardin Muhammad community had, and this is like the mid '80s, was you say you looking at Islam, they're like, what you gonna do? You gonna be from the nation? No, brother, I'm looking at the Orthodox. I mean, what you mean, Al Islam? Man, them dudes are soft. You know what I'm saying? I mean, literally, that was the uh, retort. Um, and so, you know, uh, I must say that there is something in the presentation or representation that has not generally resonated with many of the grassroots peoples in the communities. There seems to be even a divide between the Wafdi Muhammad community and the actual black communities where you find their masjids. And one of the things that you can take it for what it's worth, but one of the things that I would say is the nation enjoys a certain level of street credibility, right? In that they have been very vocal, or their leader has been very vocal with reference to uh, issues that impact us, right? So the people rally around that. He's a beloved figure for that. Where in which the Warp Dean community under, his leadership, it was it was less of that. It was more of a moral high ground type of disposition, and many people saw that, you know. But once you become Muslim and you enter, you kind of see that these brothers, not necessarily very well read, not necessarily very well learned in the deen, but just kind of, you know, legacy Muslims in the sense that their parents were the people who made the transition, and that's a big thing, and they're very proud of that. People who come from that trajectory, it's like a thing that you'll hear it oftentimes, like at masjids and things of that nature in the black community. We was with the nation and yada yada, and that's true, but that's not the whole story. And what I've noticed is there's a lot of legacy boasting. There's a lot of brand big upping. And what I would say is this: like the brother Rashad made a comment on his last video, and I would have to say that I absolutely vehemently would have to disagree with you when you say that Warf D. Muhammad was the first one to establish Islam in America, brother. That's not chronologically or historically actual or factual. Um, in fact, what you'll find when you're dealing with the Warf D. Muhammad community and the Nation of Islam is I don't know if it's conscious or subconscious effort to disassociate themselves with the Moorish Science Temple of America. And we know that, and I know that the Moorish Science Temple of America is pretty much, the granddaddy of them all. In so much as that it was the first organization proclaiming Islam. Uh, Be that as it may, we know that the beliefs were unfounded and heretical. That's not what we're talking. We're talking about just historically speaking that the Moorish Science Temple was the catalyst uh, uh, for the Nation of Islam. Many of the same things that they taught originally were directly, mimicked the Nation of Islam. And, many of the old heads that I've spoken with, historians will say that Elijah Poole was Elijah Poole Bey, and that he wore fez and he was a member of the temple. It's even been said that Farad was a member of the temple. That's neither here nor there. Point is, the concept of nationality or the concept of nationhood began with the Moorish Science Temple of America. And during World War II, many of the members went underground trying to avoid drafting. And I know that when Noble Ali was ran out of New Jersey by the Muslim, uh, you know, his second in command in New Jersey was Lomax Bey. And Lomax Bey went on to become Muslim. Lomax Bey, when he saw the schism between Drew Ali and Claude Green, and they was fighting for leadership and all that, and one gets killed and one goes to jail and comes home and ends up disappearing. That brother went to Turkey and Egypt. I believe he went to Turkey first, but then he went to Egypt and was over there for some years. Embraced the deen, learned some Arabic, came back, and he established the first Sunni Islam organization in America. Not in '75 when you guys made the transition, good brother. Just wanted to add that because, we got to be 100 if we're going to speak the facts and about Islam in America and so on and so forth, right? There were many pioneers putting in work, uh, prior to the establishment of the Nation of Islam. And if you want to go back to just the first community of believers with some autonomy, right? You would go back to the Sali Balali community in Capella Island, Georgia, during the time of slavery. When the brother he was the imam over, they say, approximately 80 people, right? And that they established the Salat, right? And then when we say establish Islam, I want to even correct myself, right? Ezzeddin Muhammad Lomax Bey was the first one to establish an Islamic organization based on the Sunni Creed in the United States of America, right? Um, but when we say establish Islam in America, I would have to go on to say that it's yet to actually be done. It's yet to actually be done uh, technically. Yes, there's masjids, people make salat, people read Quran, people fast, you know what I'm saying? People practice the tenets, right? But when you say establish Islam, Islam is designed and inherently to be uppermost in the society. Islam has its own legal code. If Islam is not what is superior in the land, right, then you can't say you've established Islam technically, right? You're allowed to practice your religion, you know. You're allowed to practice your religion, and not because of anything you've done, but because of the United States Constitution, you know. Um, so I would just think that, sometimes we get a little ahead of ourselves. Sometimes we can become a little prideful, you know what I'm saying? And there's much to be proud of. But, when you speak in historical facts, just because, your organization enjoys a certain platform and a certain history, the narrative isn't, it has to be broadened, because that's what's happening. We're isolating voices, and then you uh, provide a perception that, only you were relevant. Um, so that's one thing. When it comes to my personal experience with that community, I got some charges, man. I mean, I can't say that they were ever uppermost in, defending the rights of the believers, fisi jin. In fact, they politicked against us, on occasion. And I have the documentation, have the paperwork, and I have the response from the good brothers, who came up and stepped up on our behalf, which was Brother Hamza Youssef and Brother Muhammad Sharif from the Shehu Jamaat. Those were the Muslims who spoke on our behalf like Muslims, as our liaisons and representatives, and not against us as if they were agents of the state. So that's a perception that people have of your community, brother. And you might want to, do some soul searching, to, look within to see what's up with that, And another thing, just since the dialogue is open, like, um, I saw a video where, brother was talking about, and these is brothers from the WD Muhammad community. I think they were out of D.C., and how they had a delegation go to Israel, and the delegation went to meet with the Israeli government, and so on and so forth, right? And I mean, that's, well within their rights to do. But my question would be, what's the topic? What's on the agenda? You know what I'm saying? Who's setting the agenda? Who's asking the questions? You know what I'm saying? What's the rationale behind it? And actually, something like that is deserving of an audit. That there should have been a report, and this is what happened, not just to your community, but to the Muslims at large. Real rap, So just, in the way, your community politics sometimes is, it could beg some questions. Um, so I said, I just kind of wanted to correct that history, number one, and number two, say that, no one's beyond reproach, and then this, whether it's, the Wafdi Muhammad community, or the Salafi community, or the Shehu Uthman Danfodio community, none of you have answered certain questions or provided certain remedy for the things that we are experiencing in this country, right? And the one organization that did have answers that connected us with a legitimate claim, you disregard, sweep under the rug, and really, you ridicule and so on and so forth, right? But you can't rebut in law. And that's the Moorish Science Temple of America. As a former member, my grandfather was in the nation, left the nation to join the Moorish Science Temple of America. So, I got that background, right? And, when I left the Moorish Science Temple of America, I did not leave without a nationality. I took my nationality with me. So when I became Muslim, I became a Moor who was a Muslim. And, I believe that I'm actually connecting the historical dots, that the Moorish identity solves much of what people suffer from. I believe that we should have one national Islamic name and identity. And I believe that more best is best suited to reach the desired results. I believe it secures our heritage. It gives us status in law. We're enshrined in the treaty between the Moroccan Sultan and the United States of America, 1786. So we are not a displaced Islamic people. Our rights were secured, but none of us want to talk about the treaty. We rather talk about civil rights, Jim Crow, abolitionist movements, underground railroads, all that's part of it, right? But for the unchurched ones, right, um, you know, there's some distinctions, qualitatively and otherwise, right, where, the identity that we operate under, we know that it is dominated by the Christian. And so we're like a secondary voice for many years, right? There's never been a national voice for the Muslims, right? But Minister Farrakhan has served as a national voice for the black people in general, right? And you see how the church politicked against him, for many years, tried to limit his voice and not let his message be heard because it puts them on the spot. Um, I think that that same thing is existent in the paradigm that we are now talking about, where in which there are voices that are not being heard because they don't have the certain platforms or because they expose, um, you know, things that are not being covered that should be covered from positions of leadership. And that's all I'm gonna say about that right now. Um, I could go more and more in depth, and provide more uh, 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 evidence for why Morris nationality is the logical and lawful alternative to the de facto social constructs such as Negro, Black, Colored, and African American. And with that, it's your boy, it's your brother, Mustafa Bay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.